The champagne glass shattered when my son told 300 people he was selling my company. But let me back up. The coffee was cold by the time I found the deed. I'd been looking for something else. The photograph of Margaret and me at the original shop opening, 1981. Instead, my fingers found the document folder buried beneath 40 years of tax returns and business licenses. Commercial property deed. 1155 Harbor Avenue. Owner, Thomas McCarthy. Not McCarthy and Son Maritime Supply. Not the corporation. Me. I pulled it out, studied the signatures. Mine and Margaret's. Witnessed by a notary who'd worked out of her insurance office that didn't exist anymore. We'd scraped together the down payment by selling her mother's dining set and my truck. I'd ridden the bus for 2 years while we made payments. The building had been a gutted fish cannery then. Broken windows, bird nests in the rafters, floors so rotted you could see through to the foundation. Margaret had stood in the center of that ruin and said, "It's perfect." She was always seeing things I couldn't. We'd fixed it ourselves. Weekends, evenings, every spare hour. I'd learned carpentry from library books. She'd learned plumbing from the hardware store owner who took pity on us. By the time we opened McCarthy Maritime Supply, that building was ours in every sense. Bought with our money, built with our hands, soaked with our sweat. 43 years later, it was worth $6 million. The waterfront had changed. Restaurants, condos, boutiques where fishing suppliers used to be. Harbor Avenue was prime real estate now. Developers circled constantly, making offers, getting refused. I'd never sold because the building was Margaret's. Her vision, her faith, her legacy. She died 2 years ago. Heart attack at the shop, surrounded by coils of rope and brass fittings and the nautical charts she'd loved to study. The paramedics said it was instant. I hoped they weren't lying. My son Daniel had taken over as president after her funeral. I'd stepped back, let him run things. He had an MBA, modern ideas, strategies I didn't fully understand. The company had grown under his leadership, online sales, corporate contracts, regional expansion. I was proud. Mostly I was tired. Tonight was my retirement party. 70 years old, 50 years in the maritime supply business. Time to let go completely. Daniel had insisted on the Harbor View Grand, the fanciest hotel on the waterfront, the kind of place Margaret and I had never thought to enter. I dressed in my gray suit, the one I'd worn to business meetings and funerals and every formal occasion for the past decade. Margaret had picked it out. "You look distinguished," she'd said. Distinguished meant old, but she'd made it sound dignified. I drove myself in the truck, newer than the one I'd sold in 1982, but still a truck. Some habits didn't change. The ballroom was full when I arrived. 300 people, according to Daniel's assistant. Employees, suppliers, customers, industry contacts. A banner reading, "Congratulations Tom McCarthy, 50 years of excellence," hung above a buffet table that probably cost more than our first month's revenue. Daniel stood at the center with his wife, Vanessa. My son wore a designer suit, hairstyled like a news anchor, looking nothing like the kid who'd helped me load trucks on summer breaks. Vanessa glittered in a dress that cost more than Margaret's entire wardrobe had. "Dad," Daniel spotted me, waved me over. The guest of honor arrives. People surrounded us. Handshakes, congratulations, stories about the old days. I smiled, nodded, accepted their kind words while feeling like a museum exhibit. Daniel clinked his glass. The room quieted. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began. "We're here to celebrate my father, Tom McCarthy, and 5 decades of dedication to McCarthy Maritime Supply." Applause. I stood awkwardly while people clapped. "My father built this company from nothing," Daniel continued. "He and my mother, who we miss terribly, created something remarkable. A legacy of quality, service, and integrity." More applause. I looked for Margaret in the crowd out of habit, forgetting for a moment she was gone. "Dad's retiring marks the end of an era," Daniel said, "and the beginning of a new one. Which brings me to an exciting announcement." Something in his tone shifted. Vanessa's smile got sharper. "After months of negotiations, I'm thrilled to announce that McCarthy Maritime Supply has been acquired by Coastal Holdings Group for $42 million. The room erupted. Applause, gasps, excited chatter. I stood completely still. "The sale finalizes next month," Daniel continued, voice rising with enthusiasm. "Coastal is a national distributor with the infrastructure to take McCarthy to levels we couldn't achieve independently. It's the best decision for the company, for our employees, and for the future. He raised his glass. To my father's legacy, and to the exciting journey ahead. To Tom, someone shouted. To the future. 300 glasses lifted while I struggled to breathe. Daniel turned to me, still smiling. Dad, say a few words. Everyone was watching. Waiting. I walked slowly to where Daniel stood. Took the microphone from his hand. My son, I said quietly, just announced the sale of a company he doesn't own. The room went silent. Daniel's smile froze. Dad. In a building he has no authority to sell. I pulled the deed from my jacket pocket, unfolded it with hands that had gone steady despite my pounding heart. Because McCarthy Maritime Supply operates in a building owned solely by me, and the lease agreement, which I wrote 43 years ago, specifically states that ownership cannot be transferred without the property owner's written consent. I looked at my son, which I haven't given. The silence was absolute. Vanessa laughed, sharp, dismissive. Tom, this isn't the time for confusion. The lawyers handled everything. Did the lawyers review the property deed? I asked. Daniel's face was draining color. The company owns the building. It's been company property for decades. Check your records. McCarthy Maritime Supply leases the building from me for $1 per year. The lease was structured that way for tax and liability purposes. Your mother's idea. She was always smarter about these things than me. I handed the deed to the nearest person, Gerald Thorpe, our corporate attorney for 20 years. He studied it, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm. This is legitimate, Gerald said quietly. Thomas McCarthy is sole owner of 1155 Harbor Avenue. The company has a lease agreement, but the property itself. He looked at Daniel. You didn't verify the deed before negotiating the sale? Daniel grabbed the document. Read frantically. This is a technicality. The building is part of the company's operational assets. Coastal's offer accounts for a business that operates in a building it doesn't own. I said, what happens when I terminate the lease? You wouldn't. Daniel's voice went hard. You're being emotional. You're upset we didn't consult you. Fine. We'll bring you into the conversations. But this sale is happening. Why? Because it's a smart business decision. 42 million sounds impressive until you realize you're selling what your mother and I spent 50 years building for less than it's worth. I looked around at the stunned faces. The building alone is valued at $6 million. The customer relationships, the supplier networks, the reputation, you can't put a price on those. Coastal is getting a bargain, and you're getting cash to walk away. Vanessa stepped forward. Tom, you're embarrassing yourself. This is Daniel's company now. Margaret left it to him. Margaret left him the business operations, not the building, not the property rights, not the authority to destroy what we built together. Destroy? Daniel's voice rose. I've grown this company by 40%. I've modernized operations, expanded markets, increased revenue. You ran a local supplier. I'm building a regional empire. By selling out to a corporation that'll gut the staff and strip the assets. By securing everyone's future. Daniel threw the deed on the buffet table. You think Coastal is buying us to shut us down? They're investing in growth. Our employees get better benefits, better opportunities. You're so stuck in the past you can't see progress when it's right in front of you. I picked up the deed, folded it carefully. Did you tell the employees about the acquisition before tonight? Silence. Did you discuss it with the people who've worked here for 30 years? The ones who trusted your mother and me? Who stayed loyal through economic crashes and industry changes. I looked around the room, found faces I knew. Rita from purchasing, 28 years. James from the warehouse, 31 years. Susan from customer service, 24 years. All staring at Daniel with expressions ranging from shock to betrayal. Or did you negotiate in secret because you knew they'd object? I asked. Because loyal employees don't fit Coastal's efficiency models? Daniel's jaw tightened. This is business, Dad, not family game night. Sometimes hard decisions are necessary. Your mother made hard decisions every day, choosing which bills to pay first, deciding whether to hire someone when we could barely afford it, staying open during the recession when everyone said we should fold. But she never made a decision that betrayed the people who trusted her. Mom's been gone for 2 years. Daniel's voice cracked. I know you miss her. I miss her too. But you can't run a company on sentiment and nostalgia. The world changed. The industry changed. Either we adapt or we die. Adapt by selling, By taking the money while we can. His composure was breaking. You think I don't know the margins are tightening? That online retailers are undercutting us? That the waterfront is being redeveloped and our lease? He stopped. Go on, I said quietly. Vanessa touched his arm. Daniel, our lease is $1 a year, Daniel said. $1? Do you know what market rate is for 6,000 square feet of prime waterfront property? $30,000 a month. Coastals offer factors in acquiring the lease at current terms, but once you're gone, he stopped again. Once I'm gone, you plan to renegotiate. I finished. Raise the rent to market rate. Force the company to relocate or sell. You were going to use my own building against the business your mother and I built. It's called leveraging assets. It's called betrayal. I looked at him, this stranger wearing my son's face, and saw someone I didn't recognize. When had this happened? When had ambition replaced integrity? Or had I just been too blinded by grief to notice? I'm not signing anything, I said. Not the consent for Coastal's acquisition. Not a new lease agreement. Nothing. Daniel's expression went cold. Then you'll kill the company out of spite. Coastal walks away. The employees lose their jobs anyway, and the business dies. Is that what Mom would have wanted? The room was silent except for the heating system's hum. Your mother, I said, voice steady despite the tremor in my chest, would have wanted you to be a man worth respecting. Right now, I don't know what you are. I walked toward the exit. Gerald followed, still holding the deed. Tom, he called. We need to discuss the legal implications. Tomorrow. My office. 8 a.m. I drove home through streets Margaret and I used to walk when we were young and broke and building something from nothing. The waterfront looked different at night. Prettier, cleaner, less real somehow. At home, I sat in my chair. Margaret's photograph watched from the mantel. Her at 40, hair pulled back, wearing the McCarthy maritime shirt she'd designed herself. They want to sell it, I told her. Our whole life. Packaged up and sold to strangers. The house was quiet. Too quiet. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. We need to talk. This isn't over. I set the phone down and closed my eyes. No, it wasn't over. It was just beginning. Gerald arrived at my house at 7 a.m. with coffee and a briefcase full of documents. Daniel filed an emergency petition last night, he said. He's claiming you're mentally unfit to make business decisions, arguing that grief over Margaret has impaired your judgment. I looked at him over my mug. What do you think? I think your judgment is the clearest I've seen in 2 years. Gerald spread papers across my kitchen table. But Daniel has signatures from 3 board members supporting the competency hearing. If he succeeds, he can have you declared unfit and assume power of attorney over your assets, including the building. Can he win? Not if you demonstrate clear, rational decision-making. Which brings me to this. He pulled out another document. Alternative proposal. You maintain ownership of the building. You restructure the company's lease with terms that protect employees and operational integrity. And you block Coastal's acquisition legally, forcing Daniel to either run the company properly or step down. I read through Gerald's proposal. It was comprehensive, airtight, everything Margaret would have approved. What happens to Daniel? I asked. He remains president if he accepts the new terms. If he refuses, the board can vote to replace him. I thought about my son, about the boy who'd helped me paint the showroom, who'd learned to splice rope at 12, who'd told me once that he wanted to build something as good as what his mom and I had built. When had that dream gotten replaced by something uglier? Set up a meeting, I said. Daniel, the board, everyone. Tomorrow. The meeting happened in the McCarthy Maritime Conference Room, the one Margaret had insisted we build when we expanded in 1993. Wood paneling we'd installed ourselves, windows overlooking the harbor, photographs on the walls documenting 50 years of history. Daniel arrived with Vanessa and 2 lawyers I didn't recognize. The board members filed in. 5 people, 3 of whom had worked with me for decades. I sat at the head of the table. Margaret's chair. Gerald has prepared a proposal, I said. Terms under which I'll maintain the building ownership and restructure company operations. One of Daniel's lawyers started to object. I kept talking. First, all current employees are guaranteed their positions for a minimum of 5 years, with existing benefits and profit-sharing programs maintained. Second, the company remains independent. No acquisitions, no sales, no transfers of operational control without unanimous board approval. Third, Daniel continues as president under a performance review structure that prioritizes employee welfare and customer relationships over pure profit metrics. I slid copies across the table. Fourth, the lease agreement is updated to market rate, but the rent is paid into a trust that funds employee retirement benefits, education programs, and community development. The money stays with the people who actually build this company's value. Daniel was reading fast, his face darkening. This strips my authority completely. I can't make any significant decisions without board approval. You can make any decision that serves the company's mission, I said. What you can't do is sell out for personal profit. The Coastal deal would have made everyone rich. It would have made you and Vanessa rich. The employees would have been transitioned, which means laid off after 6 months when Coastal consolidates operations. I looked at the board members. Gerald obtained Coastal's internal planning documents. 53 jobs eliminated in the first year. The building sold to a developer. McCarthy Maritime Supply reduced to a brand name on Coastal's website. Rita from purchasing spoke up. They were going to eliminate our positions? Within 18 months, Gerald confirmed. James from the warehouse stood. Dan, you knew this? Daniel didn't answer. Did you know? James repeated. The projections showed some operational restructuring. 53 people, I said quietly. More than half our staff. People who've been loyal for decades. People your mother knew by name, whose children she asked about, whose lives she cared about. Vanessa leaned forward. This is business. You can't run a modern company like a charity. Margaret ran this company like a community, I said. And it worked for 50 years because people wanted to work here. Because they knew they mattered. Because the profit motive was balanced by human decency. I stood. Walked to the photographs on the wall. This is opening day, 1981. 22 people in this photo. 13 of them still work here. That's not luck. That's culture. That's what Margaret built, and what I won't let you destroy. Daniel slammed the proposal on the table. So what? I'm supposed to run the company under your constant supervision? Like I'm incompetent? You're supposed to run it with integrity. If you can't do that, then yes, you're incompetent for this role. I've doubled revenue. By cutting costs that mattered. By prioritizing metrics over people. By forgetting that this business was built on relationships, not spreadsheets. I sat back down, looked at my son directly. I gave you the presidency because I trusted you. Because your mother believed you understood what we built. But watching you negotiate that sale, seeing you value employee loyalty at $0, I realized we failed somehow. We taught you business, but we didn't teach you why the business mattered in the first place. Daniel's face was red. Don't put this on Mom. Don't use her memory to manipulate. Your mother left you the company because she loved you. But she left the building to me because she knew you might need checking. She saw things I didn't. She always did. The room was silent. I pushed the proposal across the table. These are the terms. Accept them, and you remain president under board oversight. Refuse them, and I'll lease the building to a different operator and McCarthy Maritime Supply ceases to exist in its current form. You'd kill the company? I'd kill what you've turned it into. The company your mother and I built is already dead if these are the values running it. One of the board members, Patricia Lynn, who'd known Margaret since the early days, spoke up. I support Tom's proposal. We've lost our way. This brings us back. Another board member nodded. Agreed. Daniel looked around the table. Saw the votes aligning against him. If I refuse, he asked quietly. The board votes to replace you as president. I leased the building to a new operator who runs McCarthy Maritime under these principles. And you walk away with nothing except the knowledge that you chose money over everything your parents built. Vanessa stood. This is extortion. This is accountability, I said. Something Daniel should have learned before he tried selling his inheritance. She grabbed her purse. I won't sit here and watch him be humiliated. She walked out. Daniel watched her go, something complicated crossing his face. Then he looked at me. Do you hate me? No. I'm disappointed. There's a difference. Mom would be ashamed of me. Your mother would be heartbroken. But she'd also want you to do better. That's what this is, a chance to do better. Daniel picked up the proposal. Read through it again, slower this time. If I sign this, everything changes. If you sign it, everything goes back to what it should have been. He sat there for a long time. Finally, he pulled out a pen. I'll try, he said. I don't know if I can be what you want. But I'll try. That's enough. For now. He signed. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my office at McCarthy Maritime. Not the president's office, just a small space with a desk and a window overlooking the harbor. I come in 3 days a week now, consulting, advising, making sure the culture holds. Daniel runs the company, actually runs it, making decisions, talking to employees, learning their stories the way Margaret used to. He and Vanessa separated. Last I heard, she was dating a tech investor in Seattle. Daniel doesn't talk about it much. He focuses on work instead. The profit-sharing checks went out last month. Rita cried when she saw hers. James shook my hand so hard I thought he'd break it. Susan sent flowers to Margaret's grave with a note. Thank you for teaching us what loyalty means. The building still stands at 1155 Harbor Avenue, worth more every year as the waterfront develops. But it's not for sale. The deed sits in my desk drawer next to Margaret's photograph, both exactly where they belong. Some mornings, I make coffee in the break room and watch the sunrise over the water. The same view Margaret loved. The same routine we shared for 50 years. Daniel finds me there sometimes. We drink coffee together without talking much. But it's a comfortable silence now, the kind that comes from understanding, not distance. I'm sorry, he said one morning, for trying to sell it. For everything. I know. Do you think Mom would forgive me? I looked at her photograph on my desk. Your mother believed in second chances. She gave me about 1,000 of them. He smiled. Small but real. The company continues. Not growing as fast as Daniel had planned, but growing steadily. Built on the same principles Margaret and I started with. Quality, service, integrity, and the radical idea that profit doesn't have to come at the cost of human decency. Some nights, I sit in the house we bought together and look at old photographs. Margaret and me at 25, broke but building. At 40, established but still working. At 60, successful but never forgetting where we came from. She's in every corner of that building. Every decision, every relationship, every principle that keeps McCarthy Maritime running. And now, thanks to a deed and a hard conversation, and a son who's learning what legacy actually means, she'll be there for decades more. That's enough. That has to be enough. And on quiet mornings with coffee in hand and harbor lights streaming through windows we installed ourselves, it is.